Hello and welcome to another episode of the Construction Corner podcast. I'm Dylan. I'm your host. And today, guys, we're bringing on another special guest, Eric Serna, who is now with CMD Electric as their regional operations manager, coming from Helix Electric as their operations manager out of the Bay Area in California. And then we'll go through his long storied career and what he's up to now. But really just a veteran of the industry, 20 plus years of experience. And we're going to share that with you here today on the show. So without further ado, Eric, welcome to the Construction Corner podcast.
Hey, Dylan, I appreciate your time and having me on your podcast. And I'm a firm believer in outreach like this, and communication is what's going to make the construction industry continue to move forward in a very successful way. So thanks for bringing me on board.
Yeah, happy to have you, man. It's always good to bring on people with a ton of experience, see what's worked, what's not worked, and then coming from a place like Helix, and that massive operation, has got to be something to behold.
It's been an interesting career for me so far. Like you said, I started roughly 20 years ago, and I didn't have your traditional pathway. And that's kind of what excites me about construction is it doesn't matter your background, culture, ethnicity, or anything. You can be successful if you want to be successful, right? And I was working at Home Depot, wasn't the best high school student, spent a little time in college, and just it wasn't for me. And I got a very lucky opportunity to join a company called Edward W. Scott Electric in 2005, union contractor. And within 3 months, I almost quit my job and went back to Home Depot because they had me estimating, and that just wasn't for me. It's a great career, but that's just not how my brain works. They put me on the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge project, which was the largest project west of the Mississippi at that time. 6 months into that, I kind of figured we had some discrepancies in billing and production and all these other things. I went to the owner of the company and kind of explained what I saw. And 9 months into my career, he's told me I was the manager of one of the biggest electrical construction, let alone construction projects on the West Coast. And I don't recommend that for anybody for any reason at all. I was a glutton for punishment. And if people think 40 to 50 hours is a long work week, 80 plus hours working 10 to 12 days a week to try to figure out everything I didn't know because I didn't know anything really, sets apart people that are driven from people that just kind of want to collect a paycheck.
Yeah, that's got to be wild. I didn't realize that was when the bridge got put in, the Bay Bridge, that it was just 20 years ago. It seems like longer than that.
you know, it's one of those things. It's like the Golden Gate Bridge. Everybody comes to visit the Golden Gate Bridge, but if your commutes to the North Bay, Marin, Novato, San Rafael, you really don't care about the Golden Gate Bridge. Even though it's beautiful, it just becomes another object of your transportation. And the Bay Bridge, I give a huge shout out to Kiewit. They were the main GC out there on a joint venture with Mason and FCI. And their MEP coordinator, Eric Kofu, I owe a lot of my success to that gentleman. He really supported me in what was a significant learning time in my career. So I've got a ton of respect for that organization and that person individually.
Yeah, talk about another general contractor that's been around for a heck of a long time and does a lot of, big projects. Kiewit's huge too, and does projects all scopes and sizes.
Yeah, they're amazing. I mean, from coast to coast, they have a great process. And I think the key to being successful is process, which, allows for repeatability and success. And the sooner you get a habit or a process, the more successful you can be. They've got it down to a T. There's no argument.
And I guess talk a little bit about that, like having somebody on a job site, right, that kind of took an interest in you as a partner in the project, right? Like you got to work together for the thing to be successful. Not everyone's that lucky to have, a good first experience, let alone somebody like that, what you wish for on every project, right? But kind of talk about the relationships that guys go through and have on a job site, and even if you're not the same company, but you are working together kind of day in and day out?
It's a very interesting question. I'm kind of going to answer it a little awkwardly, if you don't mind. Um, at the beginning of my career, I was 100% ego driven. It was, I built the Bay Bridge. I built almost every multi-unit residential in the Mission Bay area. I did the Caltrans District 4 headquarters remodel, right? And I love being in my early 20s. I built that, I built that, I built that. And that's what mattered to me the most. And, when I got into my late 30s, early 40s, I appreciated even more what the other Eric did for me. And for me, what is most important is no longer my individual accolades. It's watching an intern that I've hired out of college become a project manager, buy a house, get married, become successful, and have the same opportunities I had. And outside of just the teaching and expertise I got from this other gentleman, I truly understood that it's giving back to the industry, just like you're doing with your podcast. Sharing this information and knowledge base makes everybody better. And I tell this to any employee or coworker I've ever had. If you get another job offer and it's better for you and your family, I am never going to try to talk you out of it, even if it's a detriment to me. And the reason I believe that is we're only on this planet for a short amount of time. And at the end of the day, I want you to have the best opportunity you can. And ideally, or hopefully, you share that same philosophy with others. And it's kind of my way of giving back now, where originally it was, I want to quest for knowledge. I want to be right all the time. I'm going to prove you wrong. The littlest issue that's inconsequential, I'd spend 80 to 120 hours researching just so I could tell the person on the other side of the table they were wrong. In hindsight, it made sense to me trying to set where I was in stature compared to everybody else in the industry. But as you continue to grow, stuff like that really doesn't matter. It's not important. If there's no risk involved, being right isn't nearly as important as you think it is when you're younger and getting started in your career.
I guess go through, let's dive into that a little bit more because there's I think there's two sides of it because there's always going to be those guys that are hungry, that are driven, that want more, that you spent so much time researching and going into all this stuff, and that's where so many lessons come in because you want to do that great job, you want to be right, or the thing to function, to work, to do what's best at the end of the day. And so it's like you need some of that, right? Or a lot of that, side of it. It's then how maybe you express that out into the world. Like you need all that drive, you need all that ambition, you need that work ethic to learn, to grow, to do all of it. But you got to suppress like the I'm right thing out of it, but I guess maybe, talk about how you are today, right? And because I'm still guessing that all that's in you, right? But on the other side of it is, it comes out differently.
Uh, the biggest thing I could advocate to people starting their career is a quest for knowledge, right? CMD's trade is electrical, right? And low voltage by extension, fire alarm, CCTV, all those other great sub trades. When I first started, I was hungry for knowledge. So when something would change with a mechanical system, I'd pull their submittal and I'd read through it front to back. I'd ask questions about how and why you size your HVA system the way you do. What is a BTU, an actual unit of measure of? When are VAVs active and non-active? And just that quest for knowledge allowed me, I wouldn't say a subject matter expert, but to have enough knowledge to know when things are right or wrong, or to even help out other trades and GCs. And one of the biggest values I bring with that quest for knowledge is I can identify issues that other people can't because they're so focused on what they do. A mechanical contractor focuses on what they need, right? They don't understand the implication of electrical contractor that a 480 volt piece of equipment is more cost effective for us to power up than a 12208 piece of equipment, right? But for me on the back end, being able to have conversations where I'm semi-competent in what they do allows design projects to move quicker, more efficiently. If we have issues, I can typically solve problems much better. And the second part of your question is how do you convey that information, right? I'm a firm believer in a couple books, How to Make Friends and Influence People, really old book, but it's absolutely fantastic. If anybody at all is listening to this, grab that book. I guarantee it helps you in your career, and I guarantee it helps you in your personal life if you just take away 5% of it. Never Split the Difference, another fantastic book. But you can convey a message of, almost anything, right? What can we see in my office? I got a list of books. You know, your opinion could be those books aren't organized in any mean and method, and you need to clean it up from small to large, right? And it's very direct. And I think the baby boomers are accepting of that type of communication. But if you came across and said, there's a potential, it might be more appealing in a feng shui type of way if you just kind of reorganized your books a little bit. Now, instead of it kind of being an attacking conversation, it's a complimentary. And being able to shift that is just a different skill set that's very hard to learn, but makes communication and relationships so much stronger long term. And with construction, relationships are one of the most important things. It is a very small industry. You've probably had a million guests say that everybody knows everybody. And it's the honest truth. You're only as good as your word and your reputation. And as soon as you ruin that, it makes your life very, very difficult.
Oh man, there's so much good in there. And I'm taking notes because this is just fantastic. And you can't see I have 5 bookcases on the other side of this monitor. So I put everything in my office because my wife's like, you got to get these out of here. They just take up too much space.
I'm the same way. At home, I've got a huge bookshelf, but pretty much anything that sits in my office, when I get a superintendent or intern project manager, these are the handouts. And one of my favorite things is we'll have a book reading session, and a month later, we'll sit down over lunch or dinner, and we'll share the most important parts of the book to us and how it could influence or change how we behave or how we interact with others, right? So there's always learning opportunity.
Yeah, and I mean your recommendations on how to win friends and influence people, Dale Carnegie, awesome. Chris Voss and Never Split the Difference, fantastic book there. And I see some of like Endure by Cam Haynes, is a great book too. That's probably one takeaway is like, look, guys that are doing great in their careers, they read, right? They're trying to learn. I mean, this goes to the whole like learning, getting better is at some point you kind of learn your craft, you learn your trade, you learn what's going on across the trades. Yeah, there's new stuff that comes out, but you kind of reach a saturation point almost. And okay, I know everything that's going on. Yeah, maybe there's some code updates and we get caught every once in a while on a code change that we didn't catch or whatever. But on the whole, not much changes once you have, kind of amassed a lot of that code knowledge and, industry stuff. From there, it's, developing communication skills, leadership ability, investing in people along the way. And I guess, in that quest for knowledge or the feedbacks that you have with your PMs, and other guys, like how do you kind of help coach them and bring them up through the ranks, right? Maybe obviously there's technical skill and knowledge, right? And company, process that they've got to know. But past that, what's kind of maybe those next couple, obviously we touched on communication and then coordination with trades, but which goes into communication and relationships, but it's that big circle. But how do you coach those guys coming up?
It's interesting. There's another revelation I had probably 5, 6 years ago. I took something called Clifton Strength Finders, and if I remember correctly, they evaluate you on roughly 26 to 29 particular skill sets. And a lot of times when you take these, they stress the importance of getting stronger in your 5 weakest qualities, attributes, however you want to describe it. This assessment slightly different, where your 5 worst qualities are probably going to continue to be the weakest, regardless of how much energy you put into them, because you're not necessarily passionate about it, right? And so this will all come together in the end, I promise. My five greatest skills, or that I lean towards the most, is learning, knowledge base. Woo was one of them that I find kind of funny, win others over, and a handful of other sets. And what I learned when I came into a managerial position is my staff would come to me, ask questions, and if I didn't know the answer, my quest for knowledge, I would find the answer and I would give it to them. And it allowed them to continue working in a very fast manner because I could find information quickly because I've been doing it long enough. That was a huge disservice to my coworkers. And what I quickly learned, well, not quickly, way longer than it should have took me to learn, is I wasn't giving them the ability to be able to learn and teach themselves. It's just like the adage: if someone's hungry and you catch fish for them, you feed them for a day. But if you teach them to fish, they can feed themselves for the rest of their life. And I was, to a certain extent, just handing people fish. So one of the things I express to my people is, if you have a question, good. Have all the questions in the world. Construction's a type A personality, and most people are afraid if they ask questions, they feel like they're less than. To me, if you ask questions, you're greater than, because you want to learn and you want to get it right the first time. So I'll express, if you have a question, do a little bit of research, come up what you think what the appropriate answer is, and then let's sit down and discuss it together. And now they're teaching themselves. We could have communication of varying opinions. And I tend to learn a lot as well, because they'll go through a different path than I would to come to a similar answer. So I really, really push, educating, learning, doing everything you can to try to come up with an answer. Other things I heavily push is always stay busy, right? Grit, determination, bettering yourself. Those are the people I look for. I'm not necessarily straight A, college educated student type person. I want the person that's going to be there at 7 a.m., ask lots of questions. If you need them there till 7 p.m., they're going to be right there with you. They want to better their life, and they're going to put in all the energy they can to make themselves the best person they are. And those are the people that really, really shine bright to me.
Yeah, I mean, oh man, so much. Um, I think if you go through, so we'll start with like the Clifton Strength Finder, and that piece. If you've done any of like the personality assessments, culture index, or there's a bunch of them out there. They'll kind of give you a better understanding, and some of this you might know innately, some of it you might not, and you're like, oh, that's interesting, as you go through some of those. But I think they do have a lot of guiding principles around them of, this is who I am, let's lean on this, and then finding ways to complement that. Maybe it's, the people that you work with or hire, especially when you come in managerial roles, find the people that complement, what you're great at, what they're great at, and then you can work on those pieces together. It's magical when that happens.
Yeah, the DISC assessment's a perfect example of that. In a lot of what I do relies heavily on communication, maybe a little too much. But understanding how other people think and operate, and being able to communicate effectively in their native language, right? We all speak English, but in the way you communicate is very different from archetype to archetype. And being able to understand and relate to a C or S type personality, which would just go absolutely nuts with how quick I'm talking right now, and being able to slow down, become 100% factual based, is something that makes communicating with people much easier, which just, brings you, what's the right way to explain this? Trust and support. All right. And as a manager, you're really human resources when you get to a certain level, right? You're still managing an operation, expectations and stuff like that. But you're really trying to get the best out of people. And you have to effectively communicate with all those people in a very different manner. And that's another hard lesson I had to learn, is if everybody likes you and thinks you're their best friend in your work environment, you're probably not effectively managing all the people, right? Not to intentionally create strife, but sometimes you have to set different expectations and talk to people in a slightly different manner to challenge them. And that's the way you get the best out of people. And so these are all things I've learned over the years, and I wish I knew them at 20 because I'd probably be a multi-billion. I wouldn't be a multi-billionaire, but I would have been able to accelerate my career a little quicker than
Yeah, really understanding how people tick, how you can, get people to work together more effectively, communicate better to achieve the results you're after, form those teams and relationships. Again, because everything that we do in construction, like you're maybe three people removed from anybody in the industry and probably one or two in your local area, right? For a lot of guys like engineering, we're maybe two or three people removed from anybody. In the field, it's probably one degree, maybe 2 degrees of separation from somebody, especially in a given, Bay Area, right? Or if you're in LA or if you're in Wisconsin, right? Like you're going to be even closer to most of those guys.
yeah.
Um, they either know you or know of you, and your reputation will precede you wherever you're going, right? Whether they do or don't want to work with you.
I
Um,
agree.
Super important to know going in. Um, the other thing that you touched on was in skill transfer, right? You didn't phrase it that way, but that's how I'm putting it, is in being able to teach somebody what you know, but have them to learn that skill and that they're able to kind of either repeat the things that you taught them or do it, maybe in a better way than you might have shown them. In your career and, seeing a lot of people come, and being around a lot of people across 20 years, what's been really the people that have excelled in their career? Has this been one of like their key cornerstones of being able to transfer that skill from them, and whether that's in the field, whether that's estimating, project management, um, have people, the guys that have moved up and gals that have moved up the ladder, has that been one of their core like cornerstones?
I think so. Self motivation is probably one of the biggest drivers for success. Um, Outside of self motivation, being able to take feedback and not get defensive is another high quality of people I look for, right? None of us are perfect. As much as we'd like to say we are, I make mistakes all the time. It's just, it comes with the territory. There's no handbook on how to get from A to Z on every single issue we run into in construction. And being able to have a candid, vulnerable conversation, letting our guard down, being able to accept some of that commentary is how we get better. And there's so many people that just, I have to be right and you're wrong, that they don't end up growing and get stuck and kind of pigeonholed into a very specific seat on the bus, and they never make it to the drive, right? So self-motivation, willing to take feedback in the light it's given to make themselves better. Those are the people I've seen throughout the industry that just blossom. And, don't get me wrong, IQ and EQ have a huge part to do with it. But being able to communicate effectively, I keep on going back to communication, I apologize. But getting buy-in and just making yourself vulnerable. So you're not just the boss or a manager, you're a person that has real issues, just like the person to the left or right of you, right? We all put our pants on the same way for the most part. We've all had the same issues. We've all done stupid stuff in our teenage years. Title is irrelevant. It looks great on a business card or on an email title block. But at the end of the day, we all do the same stuff, and we just have to be able to work through that and be people, right? So it's things that you can't necessarily teach, and you have to be willing to accept some of these type of guidance that a lot of people aren't comfortable with nowadays.
Yeah, having a thick skin, I've probably been told I was wrong like 3 times today already. So,
If I could, you have the worst but best job, Dylan. Like my father was a mechanical engineer, and I talk to him about this all the time. You were responsible for, I'm just going to throw out round numbers, $100 million, called a $10 million electrical package. and you have to draw every little dot, every receptacle, every feeder has to be spot on. And you could get 99% of it right. That 1% you get wrong, no matter how inconsequential, you just instantly become the worst person on the world. It's like you have, oh my God, the stress you must go through. I feel engineers are underappreciated, undervalued as far as I'm concerned, because you have the hardest job with the least amount of reward or recognition out of anybody in the construction industry.
Man, I'm gonna clip that, and that's my motivational soundtrack now in the morning. When I get up. No, thank you for that. I mean, it's so for my story, like I graduated high school early, went to college, graduated, and through my internship years, I worked with a 65-year-old electrician from the hills of Kentucky because I, went to school in the Midwest in Indiana. And so we traveled around the Midwest to all these plants, and doing, we did arc flash studies. So I was the guy with a clipboard holding a screwdriver, whatever he needed. I was a glorified apprentice, basically doing data collection for all these. But I learned so much. I remember being in a plant with him, and we were in middle of nowhere, Tennessee, it was a casket plant. They made metal caskets, and so we were tracing this stuff out, and we were working with one of the guys there, again, middle of nowhere, Tennessee, and he's up on a lift yelling down, fuse sizes and stuff to us out of these bus duct buckets, and I'm standing next to Joe, and I'm like, dude, do you know what he said? Like, I speak pretty good redneck, but like, I don't know, man. You're from the hills, more than I am. He's like, I that's Greek to me, and it's just stuff like that where, is he's got, probably half a can of Coke in his mouth, and it's just like, all right, cool, man. But as I kind of progressed in my career and managed a department, we were doing bunch of education work, and then went to a firm where we did about $100 million worth of healthcare a year. And a month into that, as I took a demotion from a department head to just an engineer, I became a department head again and a project manager for the whole MEP team within like a month of joining the firm. And we did 100 million in healthcare a year, and I was the MEP guy for it. Like 6 months into that, I ended up getting shingles.
Oh no.
So like you talk about like bearing the burden of, projects. We were doing a $30 million OR renovation across 2 hospitals, 30 operating rooms, complete renovations. And then they're like, oh yeah, let's change out some air handlers while we're at it. It's like, okay. So I mean the stress and burden of that, and making sure that everything's right and we've got it all sequenced out and everything else, it does bear the burden. But it's in anything, right? You guys are working on big projects under big time crunches to get things done. And one of my good friends worked at Skanska probably 10, 15 years ago as a project engineer, and he ended up getting like a cancer tumor on his neck from just stress, and I can tell a ton of stories of guys across the industry. It's not just us, right? We probably get the brunt end of it, but whether it's from the AHJ or whoever on a project. But at the end of the day, like, we all go through it. Construction has like the number 2, which is, this is a bad stat, suicide rate.
Yeah.
If anything, I think doctors are number 1, which is even, that's bad too, right? None of this is good, but it's just, high amounts of stress and being able to cope with that. And I didn't plan on going here, but it's kind of where we are. What are some of the things that you've learned over the years in trying to help, manage some of that stress without being in detrimental habits, that guys might go down?
So I'll just overshare if you're all right with that. My first contractor, I was there for 8.5 years, and I learned a ton. And I had a great teacher at the time, Ray. He's definitely my first mentor outside of the Kiwi gentleman. I wanted everything. I wanted it all, and I experienced burnout. For 6 months to a year, I'd wake up at 2 in the morning, write down 50 things on a notepad I kept next to my bed that I'd have to have done within 6 hours at 8 a.m. because they were deliverables that were due or overdue. And I didn't know how to ask for help. And, waking up and going to your office and crying in front of the owner because you don't know how to manage or mitigate that type of stress was incredibly detrimental. And I ended up leaving that company and kind of restarting, which I needed. I wish I had known at the time that it's okay to ask for help. This kind of goes back to the type A personality, and we want to take everything inside because that's the only way we feel we can get promoted is by doing more and more and more. And it's okay to do the right amount and do it well. And that gets recognized as well if you're with good leaders and good managers. So for me, it was definitely a philosophy shift. You know, our job in construction, for lack of a better term, is to get yelled at through the course of construction, TCO or substantial completion. Attaboy, you did a great job, Eric. Right? So you get one day of an attaboy, and then tomorrow you've got 12 other people yelling at you about why haven't you installed this or that. And 9 times out of 10, it's not even your fault. There's something else, a predecessor, that isn't ready for you. I actually wrote this down while you were talking about your example. Don't take it home. Hang it up at the office door, hang it up at the job site. Find your hobby, find your release. Going to the gym, mountain biking, working on cars, hanging out with your kids. You have to find a way to turn it off. And I promise at the end of the day, these projects are going to get built one way or another, right? I get there's time crunches, but everybody always gets it done, and maybe there's stress involved, but the building's going to get built one way or another. And we just have to recognize that as construction professionals, that it's not the end of the world. Tomorrow's not going to stop if I don't finish today. It's good to be on top of your stuff and meet deliverables. It's better to express why you can't meet those deliverables, explain why, and work towards a solution that works for both people instead of just taking all that stress and pushing it way deep down until you pop. And I think that's a big issue we face. The field guys have a very hard job. It's incredible. You're always against a deadline. There's always production goals. Construction is one of the craziest forms of legalized gambling. Who could build the most extravagant building at the lowest possible price and apply as much stress on their staff to meet an achievable or unachievable number at the end of the day? And I don't think it's fair to a certain extent. And that's why having negotiated work with good customers that understand that sometimes there's value in not going to the low bidder is very important to the industry and the sanity of everybody involved.
The funniest, but maybe sometimes the most apt description of construction that I've had, especially it's really for all the trades, but general contractors too. It's like picking up pennies on the 405,
Well put.
It's just like, so yeah, legalized gambling, that just made me think of that. I've heard it from a couple guys of picking up pennies on the freeway.
I'm going to use that if you don't mind. That's fantastic.
Oh, please. Yeah, please take that. It's especially for all the California folks, it's
we'll just call it the 101 in the Bay Area.
Yeah, you can change it to 680, 580, the one, right? Like take your pick a highway you want to use for it. But yeah, it's all of that. And I think a lot of this goes to, and I'm as guilty of this as the next guy, but is in some ways, right, you're just trying to please that client. You're trying to set what are unrealistic deadlines and timelines and think you can bear the burden and be over optimistic and delivering some stuff, which just then set bad expectations for everybody. So as I, mature in this way, is just giving myself more time, to do projects, as fires come up, as things get in the way, as that overachiever. And you got to know where you fall on the spectrum, right? As the guy that thinks they can carry I can work 26 hours in 22, is to you just got to give yourself a little more time. And it's amazing what 2 extra days or a week really buys you for a project.
And if you set that 2 week expectation and you bring it in a week and a half, you're now a hero. And if you set a 1 week expectation, it took you a week and a half, you've disappointed everybody and now you're not right. And once again, you're achieving it in the right time frame, but that expectation completely changes the outcome and the respect or provenance you carry getting that specific task done.
Yeah, I mean, it makes all the difference because everybody, and this is the thing, big takeaway for those coming up in the industry is everybody will set their schedule based on what you tell them, right? So your word is bond in a lot of this because they're going to build everything based off of that time frame. Now, if lawyers or the bankers get involved, that's on whatever timeline they feel like. But you know, we have to adhere to certain schedules, but for contracts or financing, it's on whatever time frame that they've got.
If I could just touch on timeframes and scheduling,
Yeah, please.
you'd asked me earlier about, helping younger people or setting expectations. One of the things I run across the most with the younger project engineers and project managers is when they build their schedule or to-do list, they typically set the biggest, most difficult, longest taking task on the top of the list. And, looking at it, it makes sense. It's going to take me the longest. I better start it right now so I can get it done the quickest. And I've learned in my career, at least the way I operate, your biggest task isn't typically the most important, right? And most of our task lists are 20 to 100 items long at any given day. The 30 tasks that take me 2 minutes each, that keep you working, Billy working, Tiffany working, Stephanie working, Robert working, and everybody else in background tasks, those are the most important tasks. And now you have stuff working in the background. Now you could focus on that big, hairy, audacious goal, good old BHAG, and you can focus on that. And now you have information coming around in the back. And a lot of times what I see is they'll work on that big goal, and then all these little individual things never even get started where the process could already make it quicker, right? So prioritizing not the biggest, most difficult goal, but things that keep your coworkers, vendors, engineers, or anybody else working in the background while you're working on that task are actually typically by far the most important goals, in my opinion.
This brings up two really great pieces. One, so go read all of Jim Collins's work, for all that stuff. I mean, his books are fantastic, all of them. Like you should read all of them. The other piece is you've got to think it's like a complete system, right? An ecosystem of people, tasks, projects, whatever's. And so a lot of the time, to your point, and giving people other tasks for them to do to keep them moving, right? They need one little piece of information from you or a sign off or whatever it might be to keep things rolling. And it's, 2 minutes for you or 5 minutes or whatever, half an hour to review contracts or something, to keep everybody else moving, but in that ecosystem. And then that, to your point, the big task, right? The project that you have, well, that can be done in, I hate to use this, but it's true, is in off hours, right? It's everything after everybody's gone home or first thing in the morning. Like those are the things that you can work on in your kind of own time, right? And don't need any other involvement usually. And so those little things through the day keep everybody moving. And so you end up working kind of two jobs. One is just the pace of getting the day done, putting out fires, keeping, projects moving, making AHJs happy, taking phone calls from a client, all those things, right? Good, bad, or otherwise, that come up during the day. And then the other part of your day, 4 o'clock or 5 when everybody goes home is the, 90 minutes of solitude that you can just sit and work.
Yeah, that's my 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. every single day is my 2 hours of focus on my direct tasks that I need to just be focused on, right? And then the rest of the day is stuff that can kind of be interrupted and not create too much issue or slow down or restart type cost implications or time implications. Excuse
To transition a little bit, you know, over the 20 years, I'm sure you've seen some changes across the industry, right? Like BIM and technology have been a huge thing, especially being in the Bay Area. You've probably seen startups come and fail and other ones come and succeed and everything else along the way. But really, let's start with how's the industry changed over the years? What are maybe some of the things that you've seen change? And then where are we heading?
It's a great question. At the start of my career, it was really the tail end of actual blueprints. And, a handful of years in, Bluebeam came out, which really made document preparation and other things much, much quicker. Email came out slightly before that, or at least a handful of years. And email is one of the craziest things that changed the construction industry, in my opinion. You used to get mailed a letter, and then you had that 5 to 7 days of potentially receiving the letter, and then you put together a response, and then 5 to 7 days for it kind of get back to the other side. And when email came out, it was reasonable at the beginning. You had a handful of days to respond to something. And email's kind of gone to the position where if you don't acknowledge you received my email within 15 minutes to an hour of sending you the email, you must not be doing what I want you to do. And it's a little disappointing that a lot of people have gone that way, right? I pride myself on more out of fault than anything of responding immediately to emails, just letting people know that I received it and I'm working on it, more out of necessity to keep the other side of the table happy. But I don't think that's anything we can change or will change. It's just kind of what the construction industry is. The other great things about technology, I see a lot of robotics type things making people's jobs easier, right? If I could throw out a company by name, Dusty Robotics. It's a startup and they provide layout on concrete decks. There's a gentleman with a PlayStation controller, literally, or Xbox, I don't remember which one it is. And this robot goes and prints all the walls, the drywall dimensions, core locations, and everything else. And it's based off using a TopCon or something else. And it's, I wouldn't say 100% accurate, but 99%. The human error has gone away. And I think as that technology progresses, and I think it's fantastic, a lot of things are going to be streamlined. And the next big thing, of course, is AI. And everybody knows construction is the last industry to employ any type of technology there is. And I think there's a lot of great discussions going around about technology. ABC is a firm believer in technology and AI. And, there's a lot of big GCs, ECs, mechanical, plumbing that are trying to figure out the best ways to implement it. But it's in its infancy. And I think the more we can utilize these systems, it'll make up for some of the deficit we have in people not joining the construction industry to pick up some of those shortfalls. And utilizing it effectively is going to be the big transition for the industry. And I don't have a perfect explanation of how or why it's going to do what it's going to do yet. But I find myself leaning into it more and more every day. Just for, here's a contract and here's how we typically mark it up. Please review against this contract and provide me similar feedback based off what we've done in the past. And now a task that would normally take, an hour or two is streamlined to 2.5 an hour because it's provided bullet points. You're still reading through it, but you get a narrative of how it goes at the end of the day. One thing I do with all the interns, I call it the banker box challenge. I'm assuming you're familiar with a banker box, flat white box. On the back of it, there's 6 pictures on how to assemble the box. On the lid, there's 4 pictures on how to assemble the lid. And what I'll do, I'll take it to an intern in college or straight out of college. I'll be like, all right, you're going to build this banker box. And like, what's a banker box? I'm like, it's a box we put files in and everything's on the computer now. So this stupid little cardboard box is $20. You're going to enjoy this, I promise. And so you'll get this kid, and I give him 2 minutes to read the instructions. There's no written instructions, it's just pictures. And then I have them start, and I set a timer. And a lot of times people finish between 5 and 10 minutes. And it's literally six folds. And the comparison I give to them at the end of this lesson is, as a new employee or an intern, we understand the first time you do a task, it might take you 40 hours. The next time you do that task, it's going to take you 20 hours. The time after that, you'll be down to 10 hours. 5 years from now, that task is going to take you 15 to 20 minutes. And as construction professionals, we understand that. And that's why it's okay to ask questions. So at the very end of this little experiment, I asked him, if you had to build this box again right now, how long would you take it? It'd take me a minute. So I'm saying, so at the end of this 10-minute task, you're saying you're 500% to 1,000% quicker than you were the first time. Well, yeah, construction is the same exact way. We understand it's going to take a while. Utilize the tools you have. And I think AI is a renaissance that's going to do that to the nth degree that just normal education and learning through experience naturally gives you.
Yeah, there's so many lessons in there. I mean, I saw Dusty present in San Francisco 6 years ago, 2019, when they first came out. I think they'd just gotten some funding, and I think maybe DPR had just backed them at that point. Now, like HP's come out with their robot. I just saw it working on a job site.
Oh, really?
A couple weeks ago. Yeah, HP. Okay. Yeah, Hewlett Packard, right? They have their own layout robot, and I talked to some fairly big drywall contractors back in the Midwest, like Ohio region. They go from, I think they do Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee. They cover that whole region, and they now do the drywall contractor, wall ceiling contractor does all the layout for all trades now on a lot of those jobs, where they've been working with the MEP guys for a while, where they'll do all like where floor penetrations are, where ducts are going to go, like full layout for the entire project will be inked on a floor. So it's pretty cool to see that type of stuff. And then you got from old just snap lines of so for everybody who didn't know, and I'm sure some job sites guys still use this, but it's chalk lines, right? And they snap them down to where things are going to go. And that's all well and good for, straight line things, right? Walls, doors, those types of stuff. But with these robots right now, you can do arches, you can do circles, you can do basically anything else, right? And then they'll actually print the name of the room on the concrete. So now everybody knows what the name of the room is, and you don't have to worry about Steve's, spray paint handwriting to know what that looks like, right? So there's a lot of these other things that are going to be very helpful in the traditional things that are done, but now a robot does them. It does them faster. You get more detail, which helps everybody in the field. So there's a lot of benefits that come from things like that. And now you got a couple competitors in the market, which is pretty cool too.
That's great.
The other thing that I want to touch on is, and I gave a talk on this last week, is with the invention of AI, with all the technology that's out here, really now it's more Think and Grow Rich than ever, right? So if you've read Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich from 1934, it goes through basically whatever you can think you can achieve, it can happen. And it's a lot about your thoughts, right? Action is still paired with all of that, right? You can't not do anything to come to reality. You still got to work and do that, but it's about what your thoughts are. And as guys in construction, I mean, we literally bring dreams to reality every single day, right? Nothing was there. It's a dirt lot. Now it's skyscraper. It's a wastewater treatment plant. It's a data center. It's whatever, or there's no bridge. Now we can magically cross this water without getting wet, So for a lot of this is now with this technology, it relies more on your ability to think and how to use it, not just the rote processes of, I am a data entry person or data analysts or anything like that. It's now more than ever about how well you can think through a problem, think through a process, and how much some of this is like you got to take that quiet time to, not answer those emails in 15 minutes, not, answer that phone call, but truly think about what you're doing, the process through it. And then you can use AI and or these other pieces to improve on your thought process for it. But I really want to stress more now than ever, your ability to think will define your success moving forward.
I agree 100%. I'm nervous that people use AI to a crutch where they don't actually learn anymore, and it just becomes the brain for the person. Utilizing it as a tool to supplement what you've learned and what you've experienced, I think is going to be the biggest benefit of it. And that's why we just have to be conscious of how we teach others to utilize it. And right now, it's every person for themselves. There's no rhyme or reason. I don't think a lot of companies have set expectations other than they'll put, IP into these AI interfaces because the security of it isn't really known at this point and to what extent. But yeah, being able to think through it and know it and then utilize AI or any other technology to supplement you is going to be the key to growth in people's own successes. The data entry example was perfect. If you're just a person that punches numbers all day, and if that's what you want to do, fantastic. I support you 100%. But that's going to be the person you're going to be for the rest of your life, right? Now, if you could understand how the machine behind it works that you're programming, you now have more use and more value towards the end product. And that's where people's true value is at the end of the day. I think there's going to come a time where there's robots doing construction in a significant manner. If you look at Boston Dynamics, where they've been in the past 15 years from a huge robot tethered with 50 pounds of cables to now a robot that can do somersaults, flips, you could kick it, it won't turn over, being able to utilize and effectively set those pieces of equipment just like a drill, right? There used to be a point in time where you had a hand crank drill instead of a battery powered drill. How do we use these new tools effectively? And that's going to open up a lot of jobs in the construction industry, just like Dusty Robotics. Someone has to operate that robot, program it, just like BIM and VDC and everything else. We need people to learn how to utilize these new tools in an effective manner.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like there's drywall finishing robots, there's been bricklaying robots, there's rebar tie robots for like roadways, things like that, on bridges and elevated highways to, tie rebar, right? Big labor intensive, but super repetitive task that, honestly is pretty perfect to automate. And it's in a pseudo clean condition.
I mean, they're 3D printing concrete buildings now. It's a real thing. It's going to make construction more efficient. It's just going to slightly change what the job titles are and responsibilities of the construction workers.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, with the rise of like design build contracts and things like that, where now you can do more integrated, delivery of systems and disciplines. Where, like, I got a friend in the St. Louis area who's big prefab guy, and so they do all their own their wall and ceiling prefab shop, and they put windows in full wall panels. They're sheathing on one side of it. They're bringing in some of the, I think they had electrical guys come in and start put back boxes and conduits within the walls. I mean, so you're seeing a lot more of that kind of integrated project piece, and they can do that on some of these projects where they terms are a little looser on how they go, or they can go to market in those ways and be a lot more efficient. But I mean, think about how that wall panel is created. It's from sheet steel to a member, and it's got everything punched in it. All the screw holes are there. Everything's like, they even have a inkjet, so it's all numbered and labeled and easily assembled with just a handful of people that then can be erected on site. in very tight site conditions, flown in on a crane and put in place without having a ton of laydown area. Things like that are, massive for some of these projects and tight site conditions.
Idaho, there's a whole bunch of pre-manufactured companies out there, Gurdon among others, that have a fantastic product. Um, the biggest issue right now, at least in my opinion, is the transportation of that product across the country, right? From a control and safety standpoint, it's absolutely fantastic. You're in almost an assembly line like Ford designed a long, long time ago. But our roadways aren't smooth enough that the 1,500-mile trip across the country, you're not cracking drywall, you're not dropping ceiling fans, you're not dropping fixtures. The range class isn't breaking. And I think when we get to a point, and maybe it'll never happen, maybe it will, either our roads get better, who knows if that's ever going to happen, or these semi trucks get more sophisticated suspension, as weird as this is to say. If we could minimize the breakage in transportation, I think this prefabricated model instantly becomes more successful overnight. And everybody I've ever talked to in that market, that is one of the biggest issues, is the shipping cost and the shipping damage cost that needs to be repaired when it gets to site.
No, it's great feedback. Um, to land this plane, Eric, any last words or piece of advice for the next generation? I mean, we've covered so much here, but any other big takeaways that you want to impart on the next generation coming into construction?
Yeah, if I could just take the opportunity to challenge yourself and other people. One of my biggest challenges to anybody and everybody I work with in the industry as a whole: find someone to mentor, to be who you were, and to train, to go through some of the troubles you did, and make them who you are today. I don't care if it's your neighbor's kid, I don't care if it's a high school kid. Take that opportunity to mentor someone, right? And if everybody just once a year, once every 2 years, mentored one individual, you're doing a multitude of things. That career path that might normally take 5 years to get from PE to PM, maybe now is 3 years. So we have another professional that has a 40% shorter growth timeline because they've got a mentor. And that rings true from the field to the office, C-suite. Find someone and mentor them and help them be who you were, because we all wish we had a mentor when we were younger that we could just bounce ideas off and rely on. And I think if we could do that, we start closing up some of these gaps in the amount of professionals we have in the construction industry from the field or the office side. It's really important. Speak at schools, just it is a very good career that pays very, very well. And just take the opportunity to share your message and your story with other people. And if we all do our part, I think we can make the industry better in a very short amount of time.
Okay, echo all of that. I mean, there's not a position, gone out far enough that you can't make six figures in the construction industry, whether field, office, marketing, operations, finance, like you name it across, if you are great at what you do, there's no way that you won't make less than six figures a year. Um,
Agreed.
that's it. I think that message gets lost, you can get paid.
That's perfect way to sum it up. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, and then the mentorship, is not only finding somebody that's ahead of you in the path, but also like a group of friends, across the industry. If you're apprentice in the field, maybe you make friends with a project engineer at the GC level, because know that you're going to go through your career with them for the next 20 years. Those are the guys that you end up doing business with, do work with, for the basically the rest of your life, especially if neither of you move. You're going to see them all the time, and that's the way it goes.
If I could, just one other thing. Outside of mentoring people, try to give back. Join an organization, AGC, ABC, WICA, CAPSFA. any of these organizations in any type of volunteer capacity you can. And what I tend to find, and I wish more of these groups had young professional groups to get them excited about these things, because a lot of the old guard starting to retire, and there's not many people coming and taking their places on boards and committees. But you'll find like-minded people that want to be successful and drive. And even if you're a project manager joining one of these groups, odds are 10, 15 years from now, you're going to be a PM, senior PM, project executive, ops manager, director, whatever title you want to use. But those people you're a part of this group with are also typically high performers that are going to elevate their career. And now you've built connections of people that can help you work through problems that are inside your industry. And the most useful people I've found are people that are outside of your industry that have a different perspective on your problem with a different solution pathway. And if we could get more people involved in these organizations that are just fantastic at giving back, I think it would elevate a lot more people's careers and just give them a better opportunity to make long-term relationships that'll help them produce more wealth for the people that end up working with them someday.
Yeah, and if you're selfish, still join them. You will get work out of them. But like you can make this altruistic and just volunteered for the sake of it, but also like showing up to these things will do your career a lot of good too. And I want to, I come from the altruistic standpoint, but I know the 23-year-old me would be like, all right, how does this help me? It's like, even if I was playing more golf, going to more shooting events, like going out and, I get to go shoot clay for a day and talk to people. Okay, great, sign me up, right?
Yep.
For the golf outing or anything else. So yeah, I mean, both sides of it for sure, giving back and helping people in your careers, it'll feel good. You'll love doing it. It helps the industry. And I can't, say enough to do that, but I also have to make light of it. And like, it's good for your career too, for all those young guys out there that are wondering.
No, I agree. I love it, Dylan. Thanks.
Where can I find you, Eric? Or what's the best way to get in contact or reach you?
Just in general, I work at CMD Electric. My phone's on 24/7, which is a detriment to my family, but I believe in being accessible. Via email at eserna@cmdelectric.com. If anybody has any questions, comments, concerns, you want to tell me I'm crazy, I'm more than happy to have a discussion, because I believe discussion, really creates thoughts and process, and, it challenges us to be better. So I'm up for any of it at any time.
Awesome. Well, Eric, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And without further ado, guys, that's this episode of the Construction Corner podcast. Until next time.